So I've been thinking a lot about the word success, and not in my usual train of thought, which leads to the fact that the word succession, I don't know, it just should be pronounced secession. I don't know. But the real reason that I've been thinking about it is because after interviewing over 150 exited founders on this podcast, I've noticed a pattern that's kind of strange and interesting. These are founders who have objectively made it. They have wired life-changing amounts of money into their accounts, they have sold their businesses, they've started new businesses, and yet over and over we hear the same thing.
I got 40 million in the bank in addition to what I had. I still didn't feel like a very successful entrepreneur.
I don't have imposter syndrome. I am an imposter.
The underlying tone was still a deep sense of anxiety and fear, and I'm not enough as a person. I don't know why I continue to feel this way as everything objectively around me is getting better.
So there's a lot to unpack here, because if you have hit every external marker of what success should be and you still don't feel it, then, well, what is success? So based on the conversations I've had with over 150 founders, the access that I have to the Hampton community, and all the responses that I've seen throughout doing this podcast for 2 years, I'm going to try and answer that question. My name is Jackie Lamport, and this is Moneywise, a podcast not about how to become a founder, but one that is for founders who are in it. On this podcast, we're radically transparent about the numbers, the emotions, the raw personal journey that every founder goes through, whether they expect to or not. And if you're interested in being a part of the community that this podcast is made for, then you should check it out at joinhampton.com. If you are a founder doing at least $3 million in revenue already, check it out. Success is interesting because it's one of those things where it's kind of completely objective and subjective at the same time. In its simplest form, it, might seem to be just meeting a set of requirements, or at least that's my understanding of it. But let's consult the elders. Webster's dictionary defines success as a few things, actually. A degree or measure of succeeding. That one isn't super helpful. A favorable or desired outcome, also not super specific. But perhaps the third one is the most apt for this conversation, or at least this crowd. The attainment of wealth, favor, or eminence. Regardless, we're in a similar situation. The definitive requirements for success can be endlessly debated, and really they depend on perspective and context. Here's an example. If I decide that I want to read 4 books this month and then I only read 3, then, it's pretty clear that I didn't succeed, right? Or so it seems. If the real point of the goal was to be more intentional about reading, or really I love reading, so it would be to carve out more time to do something that I know that I love, then wouldn't that be successful, or a win at least? But then what if I didn't enjoy it? What if I was pushing my way through and then I also failed? That would be failure, right? But then I'd argue that, well, the goal was actually just to build discipline. So yes, I didn't get through all of it, but I was building on my personal discipline skills. The point here is that you may be able to define success based on the achievement of some preset targets, and that might actually be the simplest way, the most black and white way to describe it. But it doesn't really capture what it means to be successful, because black and white doesn't really exist, mostly. And for founders in particular, that ambiguity is exaggerated because, well, you have such great scoreboards. You can look at revenue and what the exit size was and what's your net worth. It becomes really easy to create a neat little checklist of what it means to be a successful founder. On top of that, the archetype of a founder is somebody who's typically really goal-oriented or numbers-oriented. The story that we've seen again and again on the show is somebody starts a business. Maybe that's methodical from the start. Maybe they just started something and eventually realized, hey, there's something to this. Well, then they start creating these very specific goals or milestones that they need to hit, like net worth, or maybe just revenue of the business, or an exit size. And then they start looking at other people and comparing to what they've been doing. And then eventually it just becomes this thing where it's like a super specific, maybe even unattainable goal. But the moment that you define success as a specific outcome, like an exit or a number, or even just a title, you are also creating something else, a post-exit era. So then there's the before, when you're chasing the goal, and the after, when you've technically hit it. But this after period, well, that's when things start to get weird. Often, especially with money, goalposts start to move. I need $1 million in cash to feel successful turns into I need 10. I need to have a net worth of 10 turns into I need to have a net worth of 100 million. I need to exit one business to be considered a successful founder. Turns into actually I should probably have multiple exits to be a successful founder. But the goalpost moving is just one potential outcome. Another thing that we've seen a lot that happens is that people do hit their goal. And on paper, it really looks like they should be celebrating. They are successful. But what they actually feel is nothing. Maybe a little bit of relief financially, or the stress of the business has gone away, so they're feeling a bit better. But over time, they just have this inexplicable emptiness.
My self-worth was based in how hard I worked on something. I didn't have that anymore.
I thought that success would be this thing that would sort of complete me, if you will. And it just didn't. And I couldn't believe it.
Internal, deep, self-fulfilling gratification doesn't just happen because you met some objective or you have some number in your bank account. But if you've been head down for years working toward that, the gap between what you were expecting to feel once you hit it and what you actually feel can be really brutal. Because goals and milestones like this obviously aren't going to bring success in that self-fulfilling, prophetic kind of way. And when it doesn't, you start getting the feelings of being an imposter, or, wow, I really thought that this is what I should have been chasing. Was I wrong? Or worse, why don't I feel the way I should feel? Is there something wrong with me? And then comes the moment that most of the founders that we've talked to who have been through this usually come to, which is, okay, if this isn't success, then well, what is? So maybe the easy answer here is to accept the hard one, which is that it really is subjective. Earlier, I said that it's not black and white, which means that in the gray, you get to decide what success looks like to you, as long as you're honest with yourself. So whether or not you feel successful really depends on you. It depends on what you value, and what you found brings you a sustainable sense of gratification the more you spend your time on it. So I've thought about this a lot, and for me, it comes down to three things. One is realizing my own potential, which I realize is actually the one that overtakes, or that's like the deep sense that I feel for when I have to like prove myself. That's the one that matters more to me, not so much actually creating something and putting it out there and getting response that's positive. It's the fact that I feel confident in what I've done. That's the deeper sense of it. So I could still do these things and try to, be the best that I can be. But it's coming from an internal place, so I'm happy with it. That's all that matters. 2, deepening my understanding of the world around me. And 3, feeling confident that I'm having a positive emotional impact on the people that I interact with. If I'm doing those 3 things, then I feel successful, at least for now. Therefore, monetary, business, or career objectives are just that, objectives. They're ways of supporting that inner definition, not replacing it. You may or may not relate to my version of this, but that's kind of the point. Everybody's version is different. So as a founder, instead of expecting a big exit or a net worth milestone to magically make you feel fulfilled, instead think, okay, well, how does the goal that I'm chasing connect back to the person that I want to be? And how does the way that I'm doing it make me feel fulfilled or successful on a day-to-day basis? I'm going to be over here now for a second. There's a specific phrase that comes up a lot with guests once they hit that period post-exit and they're feeling a bit lost. And then they get to this same point, which is when they say, I need to find my purpose. But I have a bit of a hot take here, and it kind of contradicts the majority of the guests on the show, but it's that I don't believe in purpose. Hear me out, because really it's just because it feels reductive. It feels like it boxes you into this self-identity, this idea of what you should be doing in the world, which then means that if you grow and change, there's this layer of friction. And, because you're suddenly questioning your identity every single time something might change what you think your purpose is. On top of that, I do, in my core, believe that existence is chaotic. I think that everything that happens is because of the compounding series of events that preceded that thing happening, which also means that I think that trial and error is nature's way of bringing about inevitabilities that we may perceive as fate, or at least that's how I would perceive what fate is. Because of that, purpose in like the cosmic sense of the word doesn't really make sense to me, because it implies that you are playing a role in bringing about a predetermined future. And the only reason that I'm actually making this digression is because if you do think like me, then it means that you might feel resistant to the idea that self-fulfillment, self-success in life comes from a sense of purpose. Because I actually still do believe that. Because really what's happening is I'm actually just responding to the more spiritual or dharmic association to the word purpose in this context. So let's strip that and go back to our good old friend, Merriam-Webster. There, it says that the definition in this context is the feeling of being determined to do or achieve something, which, yeah, I mean, I believe in that because it's basically what we described in the last section, which is that self-defined determination or that inner sense of self, knowing what matters to you and using that as your core driver, working toward that every day. That ongoing nature, by the way, I think is actually a really important distinguisher between the internal and the external versions of this, because the external versions, as we have already talked about, have a cutoff period. They have the milestone, and then there's the post era. Whereas this internal version is something that stays with you your entire life, which means that that fulfillment that you get from continuing to feed that also stays with you your entire life. You don't get that period of loss because you don't lose the thing that you're working toward. And that's where most of the founders that we've spoken to have actually landed themselves. It's not about my purpose is to do this thing. It's that this is what I value. This is what I feel like my greater purpose is. And I'm going to build my life around that. So I'm going to do things that contribute to that. I'm going to go back to my desk now. And now we get to the clear part of everything here, the lesson for founders. So the big thing that I keep coming back to here is not that we need to redefine success. It's that we need to stop confusing external success with internal success because they're not going to bring fulfillment equally. There is such a thing as financial success or business success, or even I read the 4 books or I didn't read the 4 books. You can say I hit $1 million. I am successful now. Or maybe you stay true to those metrics and it feels good and you don't feel like an imposter or whatnot. That's all good. Those things exist and they are versions of success for sure. But the recurring problem I've noticed, and the thing that a lot of the founders that we have spoken to have had to overcome, is when you do confuse those two things and those more materialistic, for lack of better words, milestones become your version of success and what you're looking for fulfillment in. And when that happens, 2 things happen. 1, like we said, the goalposts never stop moving. So 1 million becomes 10 million, 10 million becomes 100, and so on. And as that consistently changes, and honestly, like pissing matches online that happen where people say, well, you're not a real founder unless you've done this. Well, then you can start gaslighting yourself into saying, well, I'm not a real founder yet because I didn't do this benchmark or whatnot. That's not healthy. And the second thing, like we said, is the wins just feel superficial. So you hit the marker and then you just feel empty and aimless and you don't know why. So on your founder journey, it's really important to continuously look toward your inner version of success as your source of fulfillment and the external one as just a way to support that and create the world that you want to be in around you. You also need to make sure that those 2 versions of success are connected and make sense together. They can't support one if they contradict each other, obviously. Again and again, the founders that we talked to who have been through all of this, who have hit the success targets on paper and whatnot, they all realize the same thing eventually, which is that at the end of the day, you are still you, no matter what happens externally. So if that inner core, that internal sense of what is fulfilling to you isn't there, then that external one that you're working so hard to build is really, whether you realize it or not, just a very fancy, fragile house of cards. And the interesting thing is that, again, because of the people we've talked to, the more you focus on that internal side, the easier it becomes to hit the external success because, well, I mean, you're healthier, right? So I've been working on the show for about 2 years now. I have spoken to a lot of people. I have written a lot of scripts. I've read a lot of your feedback, but that doesn't mean that the way that I've written this out is the right way to view success. This format of the show, the producer takes side of things. Yes, it takes all of those things into consideration. So I'm not just like, blindly throwing out my opinion on these matters. But I mean, it still is my opinion through my perspective and how I'm perceiving the things that are incoming in the first place and all of the different things in my life outside of the show as well. So I'm actually really curious what you think, because I think that there's a lot of room to discuss. Let me know in the comments what you think about this way of viewing success, if I'm right, if I'm wrong, if objective milestones and goals are the better way to look at it. I don't know. I'm curious. Also, if you got to this point in the episode, then it probably means you have enjoyed the format, or you forgot to change the tab over and this has just been playing in the background the entire time. Either way, if you want another one like this, I did an episode about money and happiness, which I also thought was really interesting. And if you want to listen to that, you should click here.